Right now, you're probably tired. Maybe you've been tired for years and just accepted it as normal. You set an alarm, you sleep when it gets dark enough, you wake up when the world tells you to, and you drag yourself through the day on caffeine and willpower. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you assume that's just how sleep works. That's just what sleep is, except it isn't. The way you sleep right now, one long block, 8 hours, lights out, alarm on, is one of the newest things humans have ever done. It's younger than the Industrial Revolution, younger than the light bulb, and there's a growing body of evidence suggesting that forcing your body into that single block every night is one of the quietest forms of damage modern life inflicts on you. Because for almost all of human history, nobody slept that way. Let's go back about 10,000 years. Before cities, before agriculture had fully taken hold, before anyone had a schedule to keep, humans slept in small groups, usually around a fire, in structures they'd built or caves they'd claimed. And they didn't sleep in one stretch, they slept in two. Historians call it segmented sleep, or biphasic sleep. The pattern looked like this. You fell asleep shortly after dark, slept for roughly 4 hours, then woke up naturally in the middle of the night for an hour or two. And during that window, something interesting happened. People didn't just lie there staring at the ceiling wondering why they couldn't sleep. They talked, they had sex, they prayed, they thought through problems. Some accounts describe people visiting neighbors in the dark, and then they went back to sleep for another 4 hours and woke with the sunrise. This wasn't insomnia. This wasn't a disorder. This was the default human sleep architecture running exactly as designed. The evidence for this isn't just theoretical. In 2001, a historian at Virginia Tech named Roger Ekirch published a paper that would quietly reshape how researchers think about sleep. He'd spent 16 years going through historical documents, diaries, court records, medical texts, literature across multiple centuries and multiple continents. What he found was overwhelming. References to something called the first sleep and the second sleep showed up everywhere. In Chaucer, in Homer, in court documents from medieval France, in a 16th century medical manual that actually recommended couples use the hour between their first and second sleep for conception, because the body was supposedly more receptive then. This wasn't a fringe behavior. It was so universal that people didn't even feel the need to explain it. They just referenced it the way you'd reference breakfast. It was assumed. So what happened to it? The answer starts in the 17th century and accelerates hard in the 19th. As European cities began installing street lighting, the night became less threatening. Candles got cheaper. Social life pushed later into the evening. The wealthy started staying up longer, and that compressed their first sleep window. By the time the Industrial Revolution arrived and factory schedules demanded that workers show up at a fixed hour every single morning, the window for a natural midnight waking had essentially been engineered out of existence. And then Edison invented the light bulb in 1879, and the night was over. Artificial light doesn't just let you see in the dark, it actively suppresses melatonin, the hormone your brain releases to prepare your body for sleep. Every light source you're exposed to after sunset, your phone, your TV, your kitchen overhead, is telling your brain that the sun is still up, that it isn't time yet, that you should stay alert. Your brain believes it. And here is where it starts to get interesting, because in 2007, a psychiatrist named Thomas Wehr ran an experiment. He took a group of healthy adults and removed artificial light from their evenings for several weeks. No screens, no overhead lighting, just candles and darkness after sunset. Within a few weeks, something shifted. The participants began naturally waking in the middle of the night for about an hour. They reported feeling calm, unusually alert, almost meditative during that window. And then they fell back asleep. Their bodies had returned to the old pattern without anyone telling them to. Wehr analyzed their hormone levels during that midnight window and found something remarkable. Prolactin, a hormone associated with deep relaxation and the kind of calm you feel during meditation, was spiking. The body wasn't failing during that window, it was doing something specific, something it had been doing for thousands of years before electricity convinced it to stop. And this raises a question that most sleep researchers don't ask loudly enough. How much of what we call insomnia is actually just the old pattern trying to reassert itself? Because the numbers here are significant. According to the American Sleep Association, roughly 70 million Americans have a chronic sleep disorder. The most common complaint isn't struggling to fall asleep. It's waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to get back to sleep. Doctors call it sleep maintenance insomnia. They prescribe medication for it. They treat it as malfunction. But Ekirch looked at those numbers and saw something different. He saw people whose bodies were attempting to do exactly what human bodies did for thousands of years, except now there's a phone on the nightstand and an alarm set for 6 a.m. and the pressure to be unconscious for 8 straight hours, and the natural waking feels like failure instead of biology. You weren't built for 8 hours, you were built for 2 rounds of 4. The deeper you go into this, the more it becomes clear that modern sleep isn't just unnatural. It's specifically hostile to the way the human brain processes the day. Because one of the things that happens during that natural midnight window is memory consolidation. Your brain replays and sorts through what happened. researchers at Harvard found that the brain, during light sleep and natural waking cycles, does a significant portion of its emotional processing, problem solving, and long-term memory storage. When you compress all of that into one pressurized block and then yank yourself out of it with an alarm, you're interrupting a process that hasn't finished. That groggy, slightly dull feeling you carry through your mornings, there's a name for it: sleep inertia. And it's worse when the alarm pulls you out mid-cycle, which it almost always does, because an 8-hour block doesn't align with natural sleep architecture. You're essentially forcing a biological rhythm into an industrial container and then wondering why you feel off. There are still places on Earth where this hasn't been fully overwritten. Researchers studying the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer groups, found that their sleep patterns don't match the consolidated 8-hour model at all. They sleep in flexible patterns, sometimes napping in the afternoon, sometimes waking midnight and talking quietly before returning to sleep. Their sleep duration averages around 6.5 hours, and yet when researchers measured their health markers, cardiovascular function, inflammation levels, metabolic health, they didn't find the deficits you'd expect from what Western medicine would classify as chronic undersleeping. Because they aren't undersleeping, they're sleeping the right way. Some cultures never entirely lost the practice. In Spain, the siesta isn't just a stereotype. It maps almost perfectly onto a natural human dip in alertness that occurs roughly 7 to 8 hours after waking. A NASA study found that a 26-minute nap improved pilot performance by 34% and alertness by 100%. The military knows this. Elite athletes know this. And yet the default design of modern life treats any daytime sleep as laziness. Here's what this means for you right now. That 3 a.m. waking you've been treating as a problem, the one where you lie there anxious and frustrated and check your phone because you can't get back to sleep, your phone is the exact reason you can't get back to sleep. The light signals your brain to stop producing melatonin. The anxiety about not sleeping makes the cortisol spike. And suddenly you're in a loop that has nothing to do with the disorder and everything to do with a mismatch between ancient biology and modern expectation. You weren't broken in the middle of the night. You were awake at the exact time your body expected to be awake. The only thing that went wrong is that you panicked about it. The world you live in was not designed around your biology, it was designed around productivity schedules, factory shifts, and the assumption that darkness is wasted time. Your body didn't get the memo. For 10,000 years, humans woke up in the middle of the night and used that hour. They thought, they connected, they processed the weight of the day in the quiet dark before the world started again. You still wake up at 3 a.m., you just forgot what it's for.